That's... Alright. Do a quick sound check. Hello? Hello? Alright, that sounds about right. Okay. No viewers yet, of course. Got a couple minutes though. Alright. Cool, cool. So, planning for a Mage game that I intend to run down the road. Just thought I would, you know, live stream some of my brainstorming, some of the thoughts I had, you know, what I'd like to see, what I... Basically going through my planning process live out and in the open. But I do know I want to run a Mage, The Awakening 2nd edition game. And I want to start out with some base elements. I'm not even going to get into the rules or the book right now. What I really want to just cover is things like tone. I want to cover theme. I gotta know the location. We're gonna want to note potential. Actually, I'm gonna put this underneath theme. Put potential plot points, and then under tone, we'll do the same because tone can also provide some interesting plot points. Yeah, you know what? Actually, I'll just put that under both, because both of those can provide potential plot points. So we'll just kind of, we're going to make it a subsection. We'll just put it right underneath those, because then we can come up with some ideas. Location, we're going to want to note some points of interest. Okay, so we'll start with these right now. I'm only streaming for an hour, so I mean, there's a surprising amount that can't be covered in an hour. So we'll start with this and see where we want to go from there. So for Mage the Awakening, a big element is going to be power. Actually, let's start with tone. I personally like running games that have like a serious, kind of darker tone, very noir-esque. I'm a big fan of H.P. Lovecraft's work, not necessarily the man himself, but his work. I like, what's it called? Cosmic horror. And I like to play with those elements of the unknown and the dark and twisted and just that general sense of you're smaller than the thing you're facing, which is interesting in Mage because Mage is a lot of focus on power. So let's, like, you know, dark, noir, which, I mean, really, they're pretty much the same thing. Noir is just French for black. So, I mean, so dark, noir, and we'll say, I don't want to go with gritty. What would the word be? Dark, noir, and I don't want it to be nihilistic, and I don't want it to be, like, pessimistic, necessarily. But I do want a sense of, like, desolation? You know what? Let me actually get a definition on desolation before I type it up here. State of complete emptiness or destruction. Anguished, misery, or loneliness. So let's go with desolation. That sounds good. I mean, it doesn't sound, you know, perfect, but good. So, desolate. Alright, and then we get into the area of theme. Let's see, I keep trying to click the wrong thing. Okay, theme. I think there's two major themes I kind of want to play really heavily in a mage game. Like, I've been thinking about running a mage game for a while now. And there are two elements that I've really been toying with in my head when it comes to theme for a mage game. One of those is power corrupts. I really like the idea of playing with like a corrupted power balance, like somebody becoming greedy with power, or just the sheer weight of being able to bend reality. So that's one thing that I've definitely been interested in playing with. What was the other one I was interested in? Hi, baby girl. That's my baby girl. No, it's all right. That's my baby girl. Power corrupts, and I think let's go with hidden whimsy. And when I say something like hidden whimsy, I think the theme of hidden whimsy that I kind of want to explore is very simply just the like the concept of this darker setting having moments of like fantasticism, sort of, and I want them to kind of play off of each other, with the hidden whimsy theme being kind of like the draw into the world of Mage, where you get these new mages and they're drawn in by this world is dark and scary and very desolate, and this magic presents them with moments where they're like wandering through these gritty, nasty streets, and then they come across like a fairy fountain, and it's just this moment of there's still a pureness or a whimsy to the world, and it kind of draws them into this world of magic can bring these things to you, and then sort of from there switch the theme to the power corrupts, where they get so intensely interested into the idea that magic can liberate them from this fallen, gross world, and it becomes a point of fascination. So I think that's definitely where I'm looking to head. I kind of want to skip points, plot points for now, simply because I kind of want to get an idea of where I want to set this before I get into plot points, because where you want to set it, actually, why don't I move that? Because where you want to set something can also give you some interesting plot points. Typically, I have a world of darkness in New York. Like, it's a setting I have played in and played with for so many years that I am pretty familiar with how my world of darkness, New York, operates. However, I think I kind of want to switch things up. Like, I even went into the stream going, okay, I want to just, you know, I want to go with New York because New York's what I know. But actually, the more I do this, the more I write down some of these things, the more I'm thinking I want to go with something a little different. I want to try something a little new, because I've done New York. New York is done for me. Like, I mean, if I want to play on the personal game with, you know, World of Darkness characters, sure, we can run in New York. But I kind of want to explore a new territory, especially since I'm toying with the idea of, since I don't have a cast yet, I'm toying with the idea of making this, planning for this game, a couple episodes in a streaming series. So, if I go from scratch, I won't be working so much from memory, and I'll actually be able to engage, and we can make some interesting new things. So, question is, where? Location. Where do I want to set a Mage game? New York's out of the question, simply because I don't want to rehash something I've already done 1,000 times. I think New Orleans is often a common choice for Mage, or for World of Darkness in general, simply because it's such an old, storied city. But I feel like, well, okay, here. We'll write down a few options. We will start with New Orleans. New Orleans. Which, I'm going to say right now, one big thing that makes me not want to set it in New Orleans, I cannot do a decent Creole accent. For the life of me. I cannot do a decent Creole accent. It's awful. It turns Irish so fast, and I do not know how. So I cannot do a decent Creole accent. So that makes me a little, like, a little iffy on New Orleans. But I don't know. We'll see. You know, some territory I have never covered before. That would be kind of interesting. Miami. That one's kind of tempting. I just thought of that. Like, I've never done anything with Florida in any modern setting in a tabletop role-playing game. I've never touched Florida. I've never touched California. So let's actually go with Los Angeles. Yes, I realize my spelling is terrible. Okay, so bear with me. Is that how it's spelled? Los Angeles? I don't know. 1 second. Give me a moment. Yeah, that's Los Angeles. Okay. So, yeah. Los Angeles is another good one. Another interesting option, being that I am a Michigander, would be good old Detroit. I feel like there's a lot to work with in Detroit. I don't feel like it's all good. But let's just say Detroit's had its fair share of bad governors and not governors, got bad mayors. So, there's definitely, since the World of Darkness tends to be a darker representation of the world as is, yeah, that could be pretty. Oh, another place with some history as far as mayors go. Chicago. Yeah, I mean, Chicago's alright, but I'm gonna get rid of that one immediately, simply because Chicago is a lot like New York. It's been done a lot. I kind of want to do something different. So, here, we're gonna go on a little adventure. I'm gonna shrink that. I'm gonna bring this forward. Let's explore some territory that I feel like might have gone under the radar more than a few times. We'll go with main cities by population. And we want to go by population simply because I mean, even though it's a fantasy setting and it's a, you know, setting that's it's a little less than real, you know, it's supposed to be like the world but darker, but it's still supposed to be relatively real. You don't want to go for a city that's got like a small population. You don't want to do a small town in World of Darkness and then have like all these elaborate underground governments, like these worlds of supernatural creatures that have, you know, these intricate societal structures running out of a tiny little podunk town. I mean, I'm sure in the World of Darkness there are vampires or mages or all of those who live in those small towns, but you're gonna have maybe 10 supernatural creatures in a town of like 1,000. You know, you're not gonna have like these big, advanced, expansive governments, which are the really fun parts of playing World of Darkness. Is when you've got like a prince of a city of like thousands of people. Yeah, it's just fun. And, you know, just looking at the populations, I think Maine, if we want to do one in Maine, it's got to be in Portland. It's got to be in Portland. 66,000 in Portland. I'm just going to click here real quick, see if maybe I'm missing one. Nope, Portland, 66,000. Okay, alright. So 66,000, Portland, Maine. So, let's do a little bit of comparison here real quick. So, we're going to go back. Population of New Orleans. So the population of New Orleans is 391,000. So we're already dealing with a much larger population than we'll have in Portland. Population of Detroit. New Orleans, oh, oops. Population of Detroit. 672. So we're still dealing with a large population. Much larger than Portland. So Portland's kind of like a option at this point, simply because it's so smaller than some of these places. Los Angeles. What's the population of Miami? Yeah, everybody's bigger than Portland, I think, is what we're getting at here. So there's 2 more places I want to check. 3 more places I want to check real quick. So we're gonna go cities in Texas by population, because I'm curious. I think there could be some good options in Texas. I've never ran a modern game in... Holy cow. Holy cow. Houston has 2 million people. Wow. Wow. Alright, so let's go with Houston. Houston, Texas, which that could be interesting. Let's see what else we got. So Houston, Texas. I said there was 3 others. I think the other one I wanted to check was Oregon. Oregon by population. Portland, Oregon's not bad. Yeah, Portland, Oregon's not bad. It's better than Portland, Maine. We can go old school and go Salem. Run a Mage game in Salem. I'm gonna put that down as an option. I'm gonna Salem, Oregon. And then the last one I wanted to check was Colorado. The reason I'm checking these last three is because I feel like Texas, Oregon, Colorado are often viewed as kind of like a forested, rural type area where I feel like we could capture that sort of modern hidden whimsy in these areas better. I mean, you could obviously do it with a high population city like Detroit or New York, and it may even have a starker contrast and stand out a little bit better. Because, for example, I mean, if you did modern whimsy in New York, like, you know, you're wandering down the subway tracks when there's like a crack in the wall, and you go to investigate it. On the other side of the crack in the wall is this hidden grotto with phosphorescent fungus and mermaids, for fuck's sake. Like, in the middle of New York is kind of that weird sort of, it's so high contrast that it makes that modern whimsy pop a little bit more. But I kind of like the idea of like this high density population city, but ones that are surrounded by so much wildlife that it almost kind of creeps into it. Denver. If I figured Denver, Colorado Springs isn't bad. Aurora. Let's stick with the high population one. We'll go Denver. Denver, Colorado. Okay. All right. So we're gonna leave it this with these options. I'm gonna figure out what sort of game we want from here, and it's best probably to check out like our tone and our theme. So let's see. Dark. We'll give them points as we go down. Dark. Well, I'd say New Orleans definitely gets a point for dark. I mean, it's New Orleans. Like, you know, voodoo, voodoo. Just all the stories of, like, you know, wicked slave traders and just the dark nature it presents. I mean, it was the central location for Anne Rice novels, which, if you've read Anne Rice novels, dark. Lots of sex. Miami. I'm not giving Miami a point for dark. I'm not. Like, it's... You hear a lot of Florida crazy stories. You hear a lot of weirdness. I don't feel like Miami really captures that dark. So, yeah, I'm gonna skip on them for a bit. Los Angeles, it's a hard one. I kind of want to give it a point for dark, but at the same time, you think Los Angeles, you think sun, you think beautiful women, you think beaches, you think Hollywood. Like, you don't often think, like, drug problem, poor. Like, I mean, even though Los Angeles has a substantially high rate of people living on the streets, I don't feel like it quite captures the dark element. Detroit does. Detroit's got a long history of some really shady, bad things. Like, I mean, there's some serious history of racism. There's some serious history of just crime, organized crime in particular, which, I mean, also could be said for Chicago, but we took that one off. Yeah, I guess. So, Detroit definitely gets a point. Portland, Houston, Salem. I'm going to give Salem a point. Yeah. I'm not going to give Denver a point. However, I feel like Portland and Houston require a little research to decide. Simply because I don't know that much about Portland or Houston. So, Portland, Oregon, dark secrets, dark past, I guess we'll say. Not past, past. Did I do that again? No. Oh, it just looks like an E. Looks like an E on my OBS, so I just... Portland, protests fueled by Oregon's very dark history of racism. You know what? I'm actually going to get rid of Portland, because I feel like Portland we could use... Because we're not doing Maine, because it's got such a low population, it makes very little sense for that many supernatural creatures to be in such a low-density population. Because I really want to deal with... I like political intrigue in my World of Darkness games, particularly purely supernatural political intrigue. Like the princes of, the Vampire Society and the Mage Councilum all having this weird interaction. And I do like to play with mortal society influence as well, but not quite as much as I like to have a rich supernatural foundation to work with. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of Portland because that was Portland, Maine, and I feel like any elements that we would be able to incorporate with Portland, Oregon could easily be incorporated with Salem, Oregon, simply because they're close geological nature, or geographic nature, not geological. Geological is what's below the earth. Geographic is where it's at. But because they're close geographic nature, I feel like there might be a lot of elements that I'd be able to share between them anyway. So, yeah, we'd just be transferring those points right over to Salem, Oregon anyway. And since Salem, Oregon is so canonically like a supernatural haven because of the Salem witch trials, which, I mean, don't even get me started on how upsetting I find the Salem witch trials, but I feel like it creates a decent background for the story that I'm trying to foster. I'm not going to say create, because as a GM, it is your job to create the stories with your players. It should never be, I'm trying to tell my story, you need to play along. It should always be, I want to tell a story of a certain nature. Tell me how I should tell this. Help me tell this story. Help me represent the kind of story you're trying to communicate as well. Like, it should always be like a sit down and like, this is the kind of story I want to make. Is this the kind of story you want to make? Because if this is the kind of story you want to make as well, let's work together and create a good story. It should never be, you have to abide by my story. It's, I want to work together to make a story of this kind. Anyway, that's enough of my GM rant there. So anyway, yeah, Salem. Alright, so we'll go on to noir. New Orleans, classical noir setting. Like, if you're thinking, like, detective noir, like, New Orleans is pretty classic. Miami, also, Los Angeles, is practically the home of noir. I mean, you think of, like, The Maltese Falcon, pretty much any movie with Humphrey Bogart, like, Los Angeles. Detroit was a fairly noir setting. Houston, not so much. Oh, I forgot to look up Houston. Although I will give Houston a point for dark, simply because my only actual encounter with Houston was an industrial club, which they have quite a few of, apparently. And that was fun. It was a goth industrial club dance night. And it was... You know, it's best if I don't get too much into it. but it was fantastic. And I think, seeing that element of the city, there is definitely a potential for dark. But I don't necessarily know about noir. I think the setting and layout of the city isn't quite as compact as like New Orleans or Los Angeles or most of the others, actually. And I think that sort of compact nature kind of adds to the noir, simply because like locations are close together. There's not so it just feels too unpopulated in comparison to those other places to make the casual bumping into each other that often accompanies noir stories feel relatively appropriate. Salem, Oregon. Let's actually look up a couple pictures of what Salem, Oregon looks like now, because I'm curious. I closed it. Of course I did. Yeah, I'm curious what Salem, Oregon looks like now. So, Salem, Oregon. Let's look at some pictures of Salem, Oregon, shall we? Maybe make that bigger. Alright, let's see what we got here. Wow, really? I mean, it's not tiny. It just... It seems very, like, homey. Like, that... That was not what I was expecting. Oh. That's pretty. That's whimsical. That's fucking whimsical. Okay. Well, I'm definitely not getting a noir vibe from it. I can tell you that. However, I think when it comes to getting to the whimsical, it just definitely got some whimsy to it. But I'm not going to give it a point for noir. Yeah, no. Okie doke. Is that a map of Salem? Okay. So, Salem's not going to get a point for noir. Denver will. Been to Denver once a while ago. It's got potential for that sort of detective noir feel. Desolate. This one's gonna be hard because this is gonna be an element that you're gonna have to add to the game, simply because a lot of these places aren't necessarily desolate. I think I'm just going to give a couple points to places that have areas of their city that can definitely qualify, but not necessarily go through each one, because I'm going to tell you right now, Denver, no. Salem, not really. Houston, Detroit gets one, because, yeah. Los Angeles gets one. Miami gets one. And New Orleans gets one. Because there are definitely areas of these cities that have gone, underpopulated or under-supported by their communities, which have kind of degraded over time. And I feel like they definitely have an element of isolation or desolation to them. I mean, especially New Orleans for regards to some of the hurricanes that have gone through. Same with Miami as regards to hurricanes. Los Angeles has had a homelessness and poverty problem that has been going on for decades. So that I feel like there are definitely areas of Los Angeles that can purvey a sense of desolation. Detroit, same story as Los Angeles. I mean, there are entire neighborhoods that are underfunded, that basically go without notice from the state or local governments, and just basically get ignored. So there are definitely some desolate elements in Detroit. Yeah. Alright, so now we'll move on to theme. Now, which of these cities could purvey the theme of power corrupts very well? And let's do this one without getting into the actual supernatural elements. Let's try and find examples in these places that are real-world examples of power corrupts. Because when it comes to theme, you don't just want the theme to be present in, like, in just your story elements. Like, you don't want your story scenes or your story arcs to be the only time power corrupts and hidden whimsy are represented. Theme should be something that's ever present and ever felt. Like, even in the small, tiny details, there should be that sense of power corrupts or hidden whimsy. So I feel like it's important to find, like, real-life reasons why some of these cities may present power corrupts or hidden whimsy to better make that theme ever prevalent. So, New Orleans. Power corrupts. I honestly don't know personally, because all I know about New Orleans, I've never been. I have seen some news stories, but that was mainly back in the days of, Hurricane Katrina. I have never personally been there. I don't quite know what a lot of the history is of New Orleans. I'm going to have to find out if it ends up being the city I choose, because that's important in World of Darkness, is to know the history of your city. Anyway, yeah, I personally don't know. I know there have been some scandals here and there, but most of what I know is from what I've seen in movies and from the Hollywood perspective of New Orleans, which is also important because that's where a lot of your players are going to be coming from too, knowing the Hollywood perspective of that place. So I feel like I could very easily incorporate New Orleans as a sense of power corrupts, mainly based on its portrayal in modern movies and cinema. Because there are often elements of, like, a bartender or a nightclub owner who has a surprising amount of power, or and as I feel like if I do pick New Orleans, we're gonna have to have a long, dedicated discussion about voodoo, simply because voodoo, as it's practiced, is not necessarily a intrinsically evil or dark or malicious religion. And I feel like that's something that's going to be necessary to confront if New Orleans is what we pick going forward. Because voodoo actually has quite a few benevolent aspects to it. Anyway, so Miami. I feel like, once again, I don't know a whole lot about Miami personally, but when you look at media portrayal, there are a lot of corrupt people in Miami in the movies and in TV, and I feel like it makes it easier to portray to the audience, which is going to be your players, or in this case, if it goes on the streaming channel, you guys. Los Angeles, yes. Let's face it, Los Angeles is power corruption incarnate. Simply because, well, except for maybe Washington, but it's, you've got all these famous movie stars and producers who are constantly being called out for a lot of things. So yeah, let's go with Los Angeles then, or Los Angeles gets a point for that. Detroit. Mainly because of the mayoral aspects, the mayoral and some of the police issues they've had. Detroit, I think, is going to get a point for that. I don't know a lot about Houston again. I think that's going to be the main problem, is that if we went with Houston, I'm actually going to go ahead and get rid of Houston. Simply because I know so little about Houston that I feel like I would have to learn the entire city from the internet, that I just... I don't feel like I would do a good job with it. Power corrupts. I feel like I'm going to give Salem a point for this, but not because of modern examples. I'm going to give them a point for it simply because of the historical nature of men proclaiming their wives to be witches so they didn't have to get a divorce. And like the power of the church in Salem being a key factor of power corrupts. I feel like it, with the historical backing there, that it might be something that is present in the game. I feel like I can definitely do that with Salem. Denver. I don't recall anything about Denver, and honestly, I don't remember. I don't think there's a lot of media portrayal of Denver being corrupt, unless, of course, you're against legalized marijuana, and then Denver is the den of sin and vice. Vice. Wow. Anyway, no. So, I'm not gonna give a point to Denver. Hidden Whimsy. I'm gonna give a point to Denver, simply because those mountains are gorgeous. It is hard not to picture whimsy in the Rockies. It is so hard not to picture whimsy in the Rockies. Like, those mountains are gorgeous. I already said I was going to give a point to Salem for whimsy because some of those pictures we saw, pretty damn whimsical. Detroit. Don't really want to give them a point for whimsy. Not a lot whimsical about Detroit. I mean, there's the Great Lakes, but the Great Lakes are pretty awesome anywhere you see them, not just Detroit. Los Angeles. Let's come back to Los Angeles, because I kind of want to give a point to Miami for it, simply because, you know, the Keys. There's a lot about Florida that, while one of your main thoughts about Florida might be some of the crazy stuff, and Florida Man, the superhero that everybody needs, I feel like there's a lot to be said that could be whimsical about Florida. Like, there's, especially when you consider, and granted this applies more to the Appalachians, and Florida's a little south of that, but like when you take like Appalachian culture, or like the culture of a lot of the people that live in swamps, like you'll see in Louisiana, and how some of that applies to Florida, there are definitely elements of whimsy there. New Orleans is going to get an element for whimsy simply because of like some of the celebration and there is almost this storybook nature attributed to New Orleans in any media in which you find it. It always seems to have this like otherworldly, separate from the rest of the world feel to it. It reminds me of what is that town in that musical, not musical, but that play that disappears. It's Irish or Scottish, I can't remember, but yeah. So, well, I guess that's it, actually. So we've got New Orleans very far ahead. Miami's 4. We're going to get rid of Denver because it's only got 2. I kind of don't want to give up on Salem. I do want to get rid of Detroit because the more I'm thinking about it, Detroit is just another big city, like Chicago or New York. I mean, all 3 of those cities are so similar in a lot of places that I really want to do something different. Now, I know New Orleans is way up ahead, but I'm going to get rid of New Orleans simply because it's New Orleans. It's been done. I want to try something different, at least for me, and I feel like New Orleans would hit on a lot of the same elements that I've done in some other games. Now is the hard part. I got these 3 top choices, and I wish there were people here currently during my stream so I could ask you for some input, but nobody's currently watching, so maybe in the future, cross our fingers, we'll see. But Miami, Los Angeles, or Salem, Oregon. I'm gonna get rid of Salem. I didn't want to, but you know, honestly, with it's got a much smaller population than the other 2 options. And population is big for me because I don't want to do... I like to do big, grandiose things as the story progresses. And I don't want to do stuff like that in a lower population area. Because it just seems unlikely. You know, it just seems so terribly unrealistic. Like, how we're running into another mage? Like, how many mages are there in this population of yada yada? Like, when you consider that some of those are also werewolves, and some of those are also vampires, and some of those are also changelings, and some of those are also, you know, goes on and on. So it's like, I don't want to do a smaller population area. So we've got Los Angeles, we've got Miami. And I feel like if we're going for different, if we're going for something less cliche, I'm going to get rid of Los Angeles, which leaves us with Miami, which... This is going to be interesting because I don't know a ton about Miami either, which is something I'm gonna have to learn. I'm gonna have to put some time into. So, location of choice is Miami, Florida. So this should be interesting. It gives us a chance to play with some hurricanes too. All right. Potential plot points. All right. So let's just toss in a couple potential plot points we can work with here. And hidden whimsy and power corrupts. Well, I mean, obviously, a potential plot point is corrupted. Member of the council. I mean, it's something that props up every now and then, and you consider like a corrupted member of the council that wants to be like a dictator, as opposed to like a proper council. For hidden whimsy, let's, like, you know, hidden in the swamps. Something magical or whimsical hidden in the swamps that needs to be defended, because we want it to be a plot point. We want there to be some action necessary. So whimsy needs defending. Let's see. We wanna use hidden whimsy as a chance to draw people into magic, right? So, I don't know. And we will come back to these, especially the plot points, later on, because we'll be doing like points of interest, people of interest. We'll be doing like the state of the Miami World of Darkness government, the state of the supernatural shadow governments. Like, there's going to be a lot of things that are going to come together later to give us a better understanding of what the points of interest are going to be in the World of Darkness. So, yeah. And I'm actually almost out of time. I think I'm going to cut a little short tonight. Going to go ahead and leave it at this. This is what we have for now. And I know it's been an hour, and I've probably rambled on in the most boring fashion. But I guarantee you, as this goes on, as this progresses, it'll hopefully become more interesting. Because we're gonna start really developing the meat and potatoes of this setting. Get into some interesting plot hooks, places, interesting people. I think one of the last episodes of this series in developing this Mage game I'm gonna do is actually even creating the villain to this setting, like an arc villain. It doesn't necessarily have to be like the main antagonist, because antagonists can be a force or something of that nature, They don't necessarily have to be a person, but I personally like to have a representative, have a single person or villain be the focus of the player's ire. I feel it really gives them a sense of focus, a real sense of like zoning in. So I think one of the last episodes is actually going to be the construction of a villain. And if hopefully I have a following by then, hopefully a few people like watching, then I will have something, and we can build them together, which would be really cool. I look forward to that opportunity. I like the idea of being able to work with the community to construct a villain or even a setting, if this picks up in the next couple of weeks. Anyway, yeah, so I've been Commodore Vice. This has been constructing a mage game, where we've just started out with the meat and potatoes, you know, the basic bare bones. So hopefully you join me for more. I'm going to be streaming for 1 hour on this subject every week on my Twitch channel. I will later post these videos to YouTube. My Twitch address is going to be Commodore Vice. Same with my YouTube, one word, pretty simple. I also have Commodore Vice on Twitter. So yeah, I hope to see you around. If you do end up seeing my videos on YouTube, like and subscribe if you like them. Honestly, I don't care either way. But, I mean, it would help out the channel a little bit. But I'm still growing, so you don't want to put your saddle on the horse quite yet. I understand. I'm not going to hold it against you. But I would appreciate it. So, I'm going to set off. Have a good day, guys. Be nice to each other. Bye. If I can hit the stop button.